Says we're live. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Breakfast and Blockchain. And if it's a different time zone for you, brunch or brisket or buffet, whatever you want it to be. So I guess we should probably always say in these things, we're always supposed to say, this is not financial advice. Do your own research. Don't be an idiot. Something along those lines. So I got to mute this background here. There we go. So yeah, welcome. Today we've got kind of the same crew from before with Gabriel Shaw, Robert, no last name, and Domenic from Agenix, and also UX Network is our special guest this week. Oh, we got Josh in the waiting room. Welcome, Josh.
Hey.
And Joshua Seymour, he's got his last name. And yeah, so I'm Chris Barnes, and we're a collection of folks from Helios and bringing in guests each week to talk about things that are happening in EOS, EOS.io, plus all the other chains, UX Network this week. So Dominic's affiliated with UX Network, and he's been in the space for some time. He is definitely what you'd call an EOS OG. And so maybe, Domenic, maybe you want to give a little bit about your background and kind of your story into EOS and what got you to here.
Sure. So we had this project that we wanted to try to put a bank on the blockchain. It was pretty ambitious for 2018 probably, but in our travels in trying to figure out where we could put such a thing, it certainly wasn't going to go on Ethereum, and most of the other chains that were out at that time just didn't look like they would have the performance. And then our CTO came across EOS and was looking at, the original specs and was like, wow, this is great. I mean, I could do everything we want. And, all right. So we went for it. I mean, it was kind of crazy to go for a project with a chain that wasn't even live yet. But, we figured Dan would, get a chain out. He'd done it before a couple times. So yeah, that was basically it. Got really, probably like February, March of 2018 was when I really started like engaging with the community and going to some of the meetups like in London and stuff like that. I'd met, Dave Packham and folks like that. So yeah, it sort of started everything. And then, our bank on the blockchain became basically a compliant financial services chain, kind of morphed because that was the infrastructure that would have been needed to build a bank anyway. And then eventually that project Werbly became UX Network. So that's how I ended up here. And that's my EOS journey so far.
That's I think you were definitely, like you mentioned, you're kind of early, which is it's always a problem sometimes to be a little bit too early for something, right? Like solid idea, totally is going to happen. It is the future, as we see with the emergence of CBDCs, right? Central bank digital currencies. That's bank on a blockchain. Hello, or it's okay if it's centralized by the current authority. It wasn't okay when we did it as an EOS fork, right? Because I think Warbly was probably the first kind of quote sister chain. Like you were the first sort of spinoff of EOS.io Tech outside of EOS. Is that right?
We were right there. I don't think we were first because I think Wax got up pretty quick.
Okay.
But we were definitely right there. Enough to take a bunch of shit from everybody. Let's put it that way. And everybody telling us we were jerks. And, even though we were doing an airdrop, which was a terrible thing, which of course nobody does anymore because they suck. For the most part, they have limited use case. But anyway, yeah, we were pretty early on doing all that stuff. And we were also the first people, along with Wax, to actually start centralized, which everybody gave us a bunch of shit for. And of course, everybody now does, because it makes sense. You got to get the thing going and then you got to decentralize it.
Yeah,
that's the way it's done.
Yeah. It's the Ricky Bobby analogy doesn't quite work. If you're not first, you're last. If you're first, you may end up last.
Yeah. Well, I think it laid the foundation for what the guys at UX eventually created, right? We sort of like we hacked through all the bushes, right? Like figuring a bunch of stuff out, figuring out how you could do the KYC and make it reusable and legal and all that, and went down a bunch of dead ends. And so I think when it finally came time for those guys to take that information and then get their vision for UX as a settlement layer, right? Just kind of an extension of just or a great use case of a financial services chain. But and did different things, which verbally you had to KYC. On UX you don't. They have both KYC accounts and just regular accounts, like any EOS chain. So it was an evolution, but it contributed to something. So it wasn't like, oh, we're super early, just way ahead of our time, and it turned into nothing, right? So kind of got lucky that these guys had a vision that I think makes sense, right, and is timely.
Yeah. What do you fellas think?
So I'm curious about the bank. Like, what's your perspective now on having a blockchain bank? Is that any closer to being viable, or is it technology, or is it just pure regulation that we can't get the licenses?
Well, again, they all stole my idea, because now they're all doing it. Coinbase, and I know I'm going to sound arrogant, but I swear I have all the documentation. The way you do it, right, is you buy in the US at least, you want to buy a small community bank that's nationally chartered, right, which was easy to do in like the 60s and 70s apparently. And so you got these like really tiny banks in rural wherever United States that probably have $1 million in deposits, but they've got this national charter, and it's sort of like getting a liquor license, right? Like in certain places, like in New York City, they're like, you got to go through the mob and kill 30 people and, pay $1 million and blow the mayor, and then you get a liquor license, right? So you buy one of these little banks, pretty much, usually they're like distressed and they're on their way out. And then what you would do is just basically revamp, install modern software, which is off the shelf. Surprisingly, there's tons of, I think they call treasury management, something like that. Treasury's in the name, but there's specific software for banks basically, or financial institutions. And then, so I think all that's there, and certainly the tech is there. Because what do you mean by a digital bank? Well, you're taking deposits, so you're talking custodianship, and those rules now are pretty well defined. In the US, at least, in Europe, like, here's what it is, here's what it means, here's your liability. So that would be your first step, and then it depends on the banking functions. Like issuing debit cards, not a big deal, right? If you have the national charter, you have the right to accept deposits, and you have the right to obviously allow people to withdraw, right? And do payments, right? So you can connect to SWIFT, which is the settlement system, and the Federal Reserve in the United States. You need the central bank. The central bank is the clearinghouse. It's what all day long, transition, money, digital money is going everywhere, and each bank's registering to make sure it's not going to get like totally ripped off or something. But at the end of the day, it has to clear at the Fed. It sort of settles everybody up, and then sort of the madness starts again. Interestingly, you don't need much of a license to make your own Federal Reserve. I had no idea. So the Challenger Bank DAO out of Wyoming, I forget the name, American Crypto Fed, right? Fed. I was astounded. That's exactly what they're doing. Like, their chain is going to be a sort of a Federal Reserve, a clearinghouse for a new payment system. They're supposed to be using their EOS. They are using EOS. And so you can do that. But, God forbid you try to like start a bank, that's a crazy thing. So I think it's a long answer, but yeah, it's totally viable. But you also need a lot of money, because you can go and buy that bank, but then the license doesn't just get transferred automatically, right? You kind of have to show that you deserve it. So in a sense, you go through the process, but you wouldn't even get to go through the process without the bank that you buy.
Yeah.
So it gives you the in, and then as long as you have enough basically capital They know you're not going to go under if you make some mistakes or stuff like that. That's all they want. And then and of course you need to be no felonies and stuff like that, which I never get through. But I had people for that. So
yeah. Did American Crypto Fed? They never bought a bank though, right? They're doing
no. They're not going to. They're the clearing. They're the Federal Reserve of their system.
Okay.
They're just trying to be a new with their own digital currency.
And they're getting some pushback, which is not surprising.
I don't know recently, because when I was talking to them, they were doing well, and they were actually the banks were working with them. It was really weird. I felt I'm do they know what you're doing? Really? Because I don't think they would be so cozy. Yeah. But I think they probably just think they're not going to make it. And oh, that's cute. They're going to make their own Federal Reserve on the blockchain. That's awesome. Good luck, buddy. But next thing you know, they're doing $1 billion a day or something. They'd be shooting them. So, it's still a cartel. Yes, is the short answer.
One of the challenges is the actual points of sale, right? You can have your own clearing system, but at the end of the day, you got to actually have consumers that are utilizing and being able to spend their currency.
And merchants, right? Both ends. You got to work both ends of the pipeline, or it's useless.
Right, and that's been one of the big challenges for crypto to date, is onboarding merchants and consumers to make it viable to actually spend crypto. Still a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly it. I was just talking to somebody about, I think one of the most radical, revolutionary things you can do still today is try to transact in crypto as much as possible. Accept it for your work, pay for things when you can, because if we don't separate money from governments, the shit's not going to stop, right? They're clearly I don't even know how to describe governments. They're just drunks at Mardi Gras with the money thing at this point, right? It's print, everybody gets laid, just money everywhere. And that, we know that's not sustainable, and they don't have any restraint. They don't really have fiscal policy, right? Let's face it. The fiscal policy is, how much money do I need to print to get elected, right? It's garbage. So, or in the incident in Canada, that's what we were talking about, right? Where personal citizens sent crypto to other personal citizens that they wanted to then turn into cash, and the Canadian government blocked them. It's that's bullshit. They should never have been able to legally do that, right? It's how do you know what I gave the guy money for? I got to given him money because I owed him $100, and suddenly the guy can't transact. Come on, So, you can see how much a country can do, or government can do, when it controls the money supply. It's not just you can't transact. It can stop a protest, right? Or certainly make that harder. And I don't think that's good for democracy.
So you mentioned there, one of the most radical things that we can do is actually figure out how to transact in crypto as often as possible. Let's maybe take that concept, and I'm curious about what's happening with the UX blockchain, or how you see that happening. What is happening in the UX ecosystem? How advanced is it in terms of having applications, having transactability between different people, and just what's the picture there at the moment?
Yeah, well, you guys, Chris has done some interviews with Darren and Guillaume, and they certainly have a far more advanced take because it's their vision. But my understanding of it is the vision for now is to be that settlement layer of blockchains, though, right? So we're going to need that. Someone's going to have to play that role, and it won't be one, right? Ideally, there should be, I think, multiple, because that's by definition what we're trying to accomplish here: decentralization. Of course, we don't want single point of failure, But with the bridge technology, which is basically live and working, so that's how all of the tokens can move back and forth now, and so. All XIO chains, and then Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, but I think it's technically adaptable to any blockchain theoretically.
Does settlement layer is that a kind of an equivalence of a clearinghouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think so in a way. Darren would articulate it much better because he's got the deep finance background. I'm more of like a sort of pseudo business radical type. Like I don't have the deep finance background. I mean, I've learned along the way, and I learned a lot about compliance. I can certainly bore the shit out of you with all of that, but it's all these different elements, right? So yes, the clearinghouse, right? Like the funds, again, there needs to be a place where they can settle, but where they can also be, interchanged, right? Because we have Bitcoin, right? And that has the biggest adoption, and that's great. And that really, though, we all kind of know was not designed to really be a currency per se, because it's not a highly performant chain. And you can talk Lightning. I don't want to get into that, but like, it's probably not going to be the money, but it's probably going to be like the backing of the money type thing, right? A true store of value. And then you'll have, okay, we're Bitcoin backed eventually instead of dollar backed, right? That kind of thing. Because for money, we need fast transaction speeds and all that stuff. But, you also need oracles, because you got to get price data, and it has to be accurate. And so they built like the QED oracles, which was they've been running the Delphi Oracle software for, really early days. I think it's, if not 2018, certainly 2019, and it's like the most used on Wax, and doing a lot of pricing. The block producers run it, but the QED version is adding collateralized element to it, so that the oracle has to be backed, right? Right now, most oracles just give you a price feed, and you kind of hope it's good. And that's the relationship between the app. It's kind of crazy, right? And that's why you've seen these hacks, like basically you've seen like price-based hacks, where they just feed the contract a price that's going to trigger some kind of crazy withdrawal or whatever. And, they steal a bunch of money. Or bridges. Again, the way that other bridges have been designed, my understanding is the UX bridge, and I think G probably talked about this in your video more, Chris, but it could never be hacked that way, because it's trustless, and it just isn't the same attack vector surface area. So, because that was like, what, $300 million or something, that last hack on
between
God, right? It's $300 million. I mean, there's never been a bank heist like that. That's crazy. So, we have to be able to stop all that. But when mistakes are made, a QED oracle, it's going to pay out with a smart contract, not like a committee, not a bunch of dudes sitting around in a room, beating each other off. Like, it's going to get handled right away, like per the contract. If it's wrong, there's reference oracles. They immediately take a look at the transaction and go, oh, yeah, this oracle fed shit price data. That triggered the problem. Collateral from that oracle pays the app. Done deal.
Yeah.
That's what they need to be able to do really big money, or to get institutional money into DeFi, right? Because institutional money isn't going to put its, what is that, maker or something like that. They're not going to put money into something like that, but they want to, because they're looking at the returns going, wow, that would be sweet.
Well, that's, I spend a lot of time, not a lot of time, but I'm a fan of the Terra Luna ecosystem and their UST stable token, and they're now starting to back. You talked about the use of Bitcoin not really necessarily being that transaction layer, but more like a collateral or a backing of other tokens, and they're starting to back and collateralize that UST stable coin with Bitcoin and not just Luna.
Cool,
which is interesting, and so it's it's smart, right? Because you want to see this. And so again, that bridge, though, it's going to create a honeypot. How's that collateral stored? What does that look like? How many people are really smart enough to understand if it's safe or not? A lot of us are. You just got to trust it. That guy seems smart, and he's using it, so it must be okay. I mean, when I got into Bitcoin, Andreas Antonopoulos seemed really smart, so I just kind of trusted what he said. And
that was a good bet.
It was a good bet, but it's risky nonetheless, right?
Yeah, true. No, I remember I started mining in 2010, back in the glory days, the GPU days, and the 5970s with the extenders, man, and the headless rig and the little, USB drive with your Linux distro on it. And
And you kept all those Bitcoin, of course, right?
No, God, I'd be so rich. I'd be like own my own jet rich. Yeah, it sucks. I can't even think about it.
To those who know about it, who knew
I'll
about
start
it.
hyperventilating. Like I'd be a billionaire, literally.
There's a special club for everyone who feels the same way.
Yeah. At least I'm not the 10,000 BTC pizza guy. That poor guy.
What a placard to put on your wall, eh?
Well, it's just crazy to think like I was that close to that, right? Like whoever has a chance to ever be a billionaire, right? Like who comes anywhere near it?
Well, I haven't seen the rest of that story. It may well be that, because he had 10,000 Bitcoin spent on a pizza, maybe he actually had 500,000 Bitcoin in
True.
his pocket, right?
True. So he could have more.
Maybe he does have that.
I hope he does. Poor guy.
Listening to the interview that Chris did with Guillaume just published yesterday, and what you've been referring to, I'm thinking of UX. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but UX as being a trustless bridge. Does that make sense? It's like it sounds so sophisticated, so based on the real consensus mechanisms of the blockchains that it's bridging, that it ends up being trustless, so therefore trustworthy by bigger institutions. So a trustless, is there more to UX than that? Is UX looking to have apps built on the UX chain, or is it that trustless bridge settlement clearinghouse thing?
No, that stuff's like the infrastructure, right? So, the Origin guys, Guillaume and Darren, and they wanted to build the rails essentially to build stuff they want, right? So they have another app called Utility X, and it's a derivatives platform and a lot of things. It's an exchange, and there's a lot of capability, probably a bunch of stuff I don't even know about, but so we've already we have a totally different resource model, and that combined with the Utility X derivatives is designed to actually get stable pricing of utility, because everybody forgets like we're supposed to use these things. And like I tell people all the time, like, you're bitter that you bought EOS, but you got what you paid for, access to the blockchain. You're just not a developer. You don't really know what you bought. You thought you sort of bought something like Bitcoin, but you didn't. It's nothing like it. It can be used as a currency, but it's access in a decentralized cloud, or decentralized cloud database. And unfortunately, if you don't know how to kind of consume the product, you probably feel ripped off, but you did get what you paid for. And so at the end of the day, though, businesses need stable pricing, right? And when crypto tokens are going like this with the capital value, our feeling is that the utility value, though, will be driven by far more sane supply and demand, right? Because if you split the tokens out, and that's what we have, so the UTX token can be split into a capital token and a utility token, so TC and TU. And what's cool about that is that I could sell off the utility now, because I'm just a freaking crypto degen, and all I want is my 100x, and I'm just nude, like watching charts, right? So I don't care about the utility. I'm never going to build an app. Like, I just play video games and live in the basement. But I can hold the capital value, and it's like being a landlord, sort of, right? Or you own an office building, you're going to let people rent it, to build businesses, and so it's just brilliant, and therefore you're not really going to be able. You can speculate on the utility, but it's going to be kind of dumb, because if you're not going to use it, I just think it's going to be a dangerous game. So the idea is that will come to a normal price, like a true market price eventually. And that should get the chain to be used properly. Because, if you think about it, if you've ever sat and thought like, $20 EOS, what would it cost an app, right, to run on chain if it had to buy EOS at that price? A lot, like way too much, like a big app, it would be probably $10 million worth of EOS. Well, that's crazy. That's a huge barrier to entry. And then if they just want to rent it, you're going to want a reasonable leasing price, right? It has to reflect, if it's 10x more expensive than Amazon Cloud, nobody's going to use it, right? So, there's all of those things for infrastructure, but then there's things like Orbit, right, which is a currently functioning, kind of global crypto exchange. They're licensed in like 160 countries or something, and they're the first example of a kind of a side chain using the bridge. So Origin has helped them launch another EOSIO chain because they have so much going on and so many transactions already. Like they get about 50 million or so in daily volume, I think. But then with the bridge, they're using UX as a settlement layer, right? So that they can take advantage of all of that, any other currencies coming in and out and all that for their exchange products, and they have all kinds of products, DeFi stuff, savings accounts, all kinds of things. So that's how we're going to get the volume expansion, right? Because we know the EOS chain is going to do, maybe up to 100,000 TPS eventually, but it's going to start kind of capping out because of computer power and the way the chain's designed. And but if we can keep adding chains like that and then link them with the bridge, well, then the TPS is kind of unlimited.
Yep. Yeah, that's the holy grail, it would seem. No one chain is. Well, that was the mistake when we started this conversation about how you received a lot of hate for starting up another EOSIO chain, because the idea was this one chain. It was like BTC maximalism transposed into EOS, right? Which is going to be the Ethereum killer, and it was now we didn't need any other chain but EOS. It was going to do everything that these smart contract platforms could do because it was 1 million transactions a second. Like that could do everything. Of course, that's not exactly accurate, right? It's not that one chain was going to do 1 million transactions. It's that the tech could, but it was through horizontal scaling, which is what IBC allows for. So yeah, this is pretty exciting that it's starting to happen, and it'd be good. I mean, IBC. So for UX to really make this shine, though, they kind of need to, like, they're on that precipice of kind of launching officially, right? Like their token's not really easily accessible. There's no true market yet for it. So once that all comes out, I think it's going to be quite a little steamroller of interest, especially from a chain like Wax that's having congestion issues. Really could benefit from this technology to offload some of those transactions onto another EOSIO chain that has enough trust within the BPs there that Adapt's willing to take that kind of execution risk.
Yeah, no, it's designed to be able to do that. There's even technology that can export CPU cycles and stuff. It's a virtual mining technology that EOS Titan developed. That's pretty interesting. And so the utility, right? Because pricing utility for apps that are using UX is great, but ideally, like, you want to be able to price utility from everywhere. And so then the utility has to be movable, right? It's kind of like, Chris, with solar. If I generate the electrons here and I want to sell them over there, I have to be able to transport them in a way.
And you'd end up doing it not directly. Like you consume the electrons where they're generated, even though the actual rate pair might be somewhere else who can specifically choose to pay for green energy. Those aren't the electrons flowing through their wires. They're from the local coal plant or gas plant or whatever, but they're subsidizing a renewable plant somewhere else. But there's still a market that's created that allows for that. And that's basically, it sounds like what this is.
Yeah. So that, those things, so there's the automated market maker that's supposed to launch, any day now is my understanding. And so that'll establish the market for the UTX token, probably UTX RAM. I don't know if the RAM token will go right away. And the bridge, and we know the bridge is pretty much working, right? And then there's the super token, right? So that's an example, Gabriel, of an actual product now, right? So that's the token that was designed by Origin. And the idea is to create a token that acts as an index, but then a certain amount of the a percentage of the token value that gets transferred into the contract would be used to pay for EOSIO upgrades, so that we get rid of the free rider for mainnet. It's crazy. They're paying for everything. Mainnet token holders are effectively getting taxed for upgrades, and then all the rest of the chain just get to, oh, thank you, go over to the GitHub, love the new EVM, that's beautiful. It's not fair, right? So the idea around the super token is all the chains that participate will get access to the code upgrades, and that'll pay for it.
So reflecting back on the DGen in the basement playing computer games looking for 100x, which basically just defines me, except I'm not looking for 100x, 10x would do, right? But the super token, is that like, who do you see as the audience, the legitimate audience? Do those DGens in the basement, do they actually are they helping to grow the crypto industry, or are they more of a hindrance to actual mass market, like retail adoption? What is the role of the super token between those DGens in the basement versus other forms of utility? Is it for the institutional traders, which helps legitimize and grow investability into the ecosystem? Is it something else? And what else? I'm looking for, how do we grow an actual legitimate marketplace that doesn't just cater for the degens like me?
Right. There's a couple of things in there. I mean, it's for everybody, really. I mean, it's anyone who, will want to be a part of, one of the first actively managed products, first of all, right? So all of the crypto that goes into the super token fund, if you will, is going to be actively managed by the foundation, right? The super token foundation. So, and you're going to have hedge fund people doing this, right? So, and AI and all kinds of stuff. It's like Guillaume and these guys. I mean, they've got some really brilliant software and just experience and strategies. So the one thing, it'll be like an actively managed fund of EOS.io tokens, which is pretty cool. And that's everything from like kind of yield farming, if you will, like, whether that's getting Rex rewards with the EOS that's in there, or the Telos, or the Wax, or the Ultra, or the Proton, so they'll be optimizing all of that. And then, kind of optimizing the, the sort of trading values and things and through the liquidity and stuff like that. But then you get an index, right? So you don't have to try to bet on one chain, right? So, mainnet people are really missed out on Telos, right? Telos is blown up, it's almost $1 or 60 cents or something, but, a lot, right? I'm sure mainnet people would have loved to, have a decent chunk of Telos tokens reflected in the value of the mainnet token. And so in a way, this will become like the greater EOS.io token. To answer your question, to get it off the ground, ideally we need the sort of the foundations or the whales of the chains, because we're trying to get to make it work about 10% of the tokens in there. Because that's really going to give the fund that'll pay for the upgrades, will allow for, other public goods. It'll allow for kind of a VC approach in a lot of the things. The idea is that in time, the super token foundation would be like a consensus, right? So, for EOS and for EOS.io. But then, regular folks, I think, especially if you're not an active trader, like I never had the stomach for it. I'm just buy and hold, kind of guy, sell when it's down, buy when it's high, it's just like everybody else. But, to do that, I mean, for me, I think it's great. I'd love to just park, some tokens in there and just, kind of watch it do its thing.
And it's a good way to get exposure and kind of break some of the maximalism ideas, right? Where if you're an EOS maxi, okay, fine, that's fine. But there's some other EOS.io chains, and maybe we could work together, and a rising tide lifts all ships type of thing. So if you can take some of your maxi EOS tokens, put them into the set token, the super token, then you own the basket, which has EOS in there too, a larger weighting, of course, probably because of the market cap, but at least then you can still catch some of the upside of some of these other tokens and at least give you a reason to kind of cheer for them.
Right.
Well, humans are weird, right? It's like once you own it, you're like, yeah, let's go, token. This is what, even though you might have hated it and shat on it the year before, but now that you own some, your psychology's twisted, so you're ready to cheer.
Well, I've felt from the beginning that was a major economic and behavioral problem in the ecosystem, right? That, there was all the talk of the IBC, and I had thought, and I believe it was originally slated to be one of the first builds. If I remember Dan mentioning that way back, that they really had it, I think, in year one, at least, and then it just, stuff happened and got prioritized ahead of it. But because of the way it went down and the chains and the the token economics, I guess, or the the economic system, we don't have financial alignment, and so you don't have incentive to work together. Really, I mean, it has to be the incentive to work together almost has to be on like a moralistic basis or something. I don't know, but that's not going to work. So, we know people are moved by incentives. And so there'll definitely be an alignment here. Alignment in a direct sense that, of course, everybody should ideally be benefited. Everybody participating should be benefiting from the upgrades, right? So that should improve everybody's chain's values kind of together. And there'll be a consensus input on that too, right? All participating chains will have some representation in this foundation, and and then I mean, if enough people have stake in this thing, they'll have personal, but then, like I said, the idea is that it'll start really investing in the ecosystem at a high level. And so it should drive value up for everybody. So this would be something that can unite people financially, which it also will give us a new story, I think, like a true new story. I mean, the ENF started that journey, and I think that's been great. And it's sort of like divorce from block one, and here we are, and we're trying to do our own thing. But I don't think it's enough of a story to really go to the world and go, wait a minute, this isn't your grandma's EOS, that this is new and improved. And I don't even know why I said that.
That's great.
But anyway, it'll give us an actual marketing story, because we all know that EOS doesn't have the best rep. I mean, I've been out there selling EOS in various capacities for 4 years, and it's become an increasingly harder sell over time. At first it was like the super hot chick on the block and everybody wanted some, and it was going to be the next big thing. And then it was like slowly but surely, like, now it's like, what? Where do you build EOS? Oh, really? Yeah. I'm like, well, it's still that best performing blockchain. We just don't know how to tell everybody that yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, death by 1,000 cuts for sure in terms of the sentiment around EOS.
Mm-hmm. But if we can say EOS.io, right? To me, that's the new brand. It just okay. It's the true web of chains now. Like, we are all interconnected. We are all transacting, and apps are going to be able to, like I said, they're going to be able to take resources from different chains. And the idea behind Utility X is to basically broker that, so that you're constantly, as an app, you'll be able to do like a floating price for utility, and it'll be constantly optimizing for the lowest price for you. Mm-hmm. So whether it's excess capacity on mainnet or Proton or Ultra or UX or Telos or whatever, apps will be able to do that, or apps will be able to run contracts on certain chains, and then some on others. And that's when we're going to, I think, start to see the ability to create some really complex stuff. And again, take advantage. So you might need the KYC layer of UX for your really cool Telos DeFi app, or your really cool Wax, NFT lending platform. Mm-hmm. Wax doesn't have to bother, they don't have to go crazy with all that. They can just keep doing what they do and expand and grow. So I hope that's what's happening. I really do. Because I think it'll be just cool. I think we're going to see some great stuff.
Well, the idea of blockchains specializing should be welcomed. Mm-hmm. Like, it's perfectly rational. The idea of a generalist, everything needs to be a generalist, is no. If I'm going to the doctor, if I've got a major problem, I'm not going to go to a generalist doctor. I want to go to the specialist, right? And there's value in specialization. The value in general is as well, but why, if we can have this specialized blockchains that can talk and make use of each other's specialty, then good. Like, pick your niche, hone in on it. That seems perfectly rational. And EOS.io now as a collective can be capable of doing that.
The interoperability is the critical element. You know, that's huge.
Yeah, I agree. I certainly agree that's huge. I'm wondering, I'm trying to ask the question, how do we get to mass adoption in terms of a marketplace? So to what extent is the interoperability just self-serving? We can talk about gamers or non-developers or crypto chartists on short timeframes as degens. Let me try and push that label across to developers who are building self-serving dApps that don't or can't achieve an external retail customer adoption. Where do you see, what is the opportunity? Maybe what kind of products do you feel excited about as being able to grow the pie beyond just the developer degens that are building self-serving dApps because they can somehow make money off of transaction tax or fees or something? But how do we get to the real world?
Well, from my perspective, it's a couple of things. It's a little bit of a change in the culture, and I think the way we all talk about it. You know, there's a sort of, the crypto anarchists, I feel like, are to blockchain like the Puritans were to America. You know, we're still dealing with puritanical values around sex, like, 400 years later or whatever. And the crypto anarchists and the sort of hardcore libertarian crowd, which really, I think, is what got, Bitcoin off the ground, instilled a lot of values like, we don't need to make it easy. Screw you. You got to have your keys. And, you got to learn this shit. Like, we're not going to make it easy for you. And, we don't really care. And, if you guys don't step up, that's your problem. Well, I mean, we all know that's not going to go very far. And of course that's evolved and changed as more people have come into the space. But I think it's still, there's a big learning curve. But that's the problem. I think we're going at it totally wrong. Retail's never going to use it like we are right now. They're just not. They're going to use the next layer. It's the layer that's going to be built above this that they're going to use. It's like, when you come up with a new cool social media app in Web 2, do you talk about the database you use? Oh, it's like the new Twitter, and we've got a great MongoDB database you guys should all be excited about. Like, no. Are people going to log in at the server level? No. And that's kind of what you're doing right now with blockchains. Like, we're direct accessing, so, it's not going to be like this. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I don't have sort of that type of mind. I more think macro just as a whole, but this won't get adopted the way it is now. It's going to need to be obfuscated one more layer, I think. Mm-hmm. And then it will be.
Yeah. The OAuth sign-ins, right? I think that's what it is when you use Google and Facebook and your other existing sign-ins. That's what it needs to be. Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to be using like a new challenger bank that happens to be all right. That's where the adoption is going to come. Or right now we're all adopting it with supply chains. There's a fair amount of supply chains now out there. I mean, not 10% or anything, I don't think, but enough that it's becoming something that the industry is definitely all moving towards, because, hey, oh wow, blockchains can give us timestamps and a ledger that's immutable, and hey, so we're eating that food, so in a way we're adopting it, right? I mean, in a tertiary level there, but I think that's really what we're looking at.
So I want to take the conversation a slightly different direction, which fits perfect. We talk about this obfuscation of using a blockchain, and people aren't going to know they're on a blockchain. Are those people then also going to similarly not care about blockchain governance? Is blockchain governance going to be something that even matters in this type of obfuscated world?
No, I don't think so.
Well,
But again,
yeah.
I think people organize differently because of some of the things we're building, right?
What are you saying, Gab?
Yeah, I think it will allow different types of governance. They won't necessarily know or care that it's blockchain governance. They'll just be using something that helps them govern their little world of whatever their micro economy or community needs, and it'll just have like an obfuscated user experience layer, but they won't understand the blockchain stuff. I think.
Are you talking about governance of a blockchain, or are you
Yeah.
talking about a governance app that uses blockchain or
No, I
multiple
mean like the
blockchains?
actual blockchain governance itself. So EOS block producers, something I like to think about a lot. I talk about fair often. I'd like to see them changed. I'm not apologetic about my views, but that maybe doesn't. And I've heard the argument. No one cares. Doesn't
No
matter.
one cares. No one will care.
It should, because when those block producers make real world impact, like freezing block one's tokens, that's there is so it's like that fine line where do people give a shit? Should they give a shit? And maybe it depends. Maybe again, it's not binary. It's all like what is the application you're using that runs on the blockchain? Is it your hard money? Is it your cash? Is it just your Twitter app? So maybe there's right.
But the systems we're using today, Swift, ACH, all these different systems, they have governance councils of the various stakeholders that run those systems. If you ask most people, they don't even know what Swift is other than it being in the media now. And so, that's a great example of how the technology is just infused in their life. They move money from bank A to bank B. They really don't care how.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and well, it's the competition. The more blockchains that there are, I guess, the more services built on top of those blockchains. Then it just gives people a choice to move from one customer user experience to another, and that is kind of a vote in terms of how they want. They might not understand the intricacies of how it's governed, but it's a vote to a better governance system because it's manifesting a better customer experience. That's idealistic, I guess.
I can almost imagine it being attached to an individual identity as part of your brand. What type of blockchain do you want to work with? I'm interested in decentralization, and that fits my narrative.
And there'll be a segment of the population that are into knowing that, just like people want to choose the source of their meat or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah.
I think there'll be selling points like that for sure, right? Like, so that is a selling point. If an app was to have a commercial, it wouldn't say I'm on the Ethereum blockchain. It would say, we're using the most advanced smart contracts, that ensure that your money goes where it's supposed to, right? It's going to be stuff like that. Or yes, we're decentralized, so the risk of hacks is reduced by, whatever their data bullshits and says, right? 10% or 100% or whatever it is. So I think it'll be more like that. But the governance, I don't know if it'll ever, though. I hope there's stakeholders that stay in place to act as a check and balance. Like people like us who just get all like 80 years old and still bitching and Telegram, block producers suck, we're going to fight them, and then, we can try to keep them honest, and keep each other honest. And we've never been this far inside technology either as it's being built. Like, think about it. When the web was coming, none of us, we were just like, I don't know, I was in high school, like trying to get laid. Like, I had no idea the web was coming. And then it was the web. Like, whoa, I can get an email address and stuff, but we weren't there in the Usenet days. And that's where we've kind of been. And I think because of the just unprecedented financial gains that Bitcoin has produced, it's sick, right? If you could have put $10 into Bitcoin at the very beginning, like, you're a multi-millionaire. It's never been anything like that. So that's changed its course, and I think probably slowed it down a lot because, right, as Gav was saying, like, everybody got into the yield and the immediate yield and how to get the yield right now off the other yield. Like, it would just yield, return, like, think of 2017. You look at that now and that just sounds like Scam City, right? Oh, it was awesome when everybody was in the middle of it, right? You got in early on that ICO and you got those tokens that 20x'd on Binance in 3 days, which I never did because I didn't have enough money, but still, I was excited about it. You know, it was crazy. Now you wouldn't even consider that, you know? I mean, what, a white paper and, you know, a de-slick website you raised. I mean, I literally watched this one project that was doing a decentralized VPN, which I thought was really cool. Of course, they don't exist. But they raised $15 million in 40 minutes in Ethereum. And I just thought, this is crazy. Like, you're never going to see this again, you know?
A well-paid white paper.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure those guys are having a great time. They were from like Estonia or something. So I'm happy for them. You know? It's probably tough over there.
What do you mentioned supply chains? Do you have any examples of where blockchains, smart contracts are being used significantly in the real world?
I guess I don't follow that as much anymore. So I probably don't have any more insight into that than the average, like than anybody here. I just know the supply chain use case. I just, you know, run across articles. Yeah. I think it's big in Australia, where they were starting to use it. You know, I do think we're going to see it in the creator space, right? Like, because we watched a lot of people move from YouTube when YouTube really kind of screwed everybody with the revenue, and they sort of went to Twitch, right? Twitch is more like, that's closer to us, right? Like, I was like, oh, they're on their way, you know, like just one more step and they'll get the sauce and they'll be all about blockchain, you know? But we're seeing some platforms like a friend of mine, I'll give him a little shout out, is building something called Clef, which is about getting directly to your artist, like where you can even like put like up money so they'll do a song for you. Like, hey, it's $1,000. Will you write me a song about my girlfriend? I'm going to give it to her on Valentine's Day or whatever, right? Really highly personalized experiences, but, you know, 95% of that money going straight to the artist, right? So distribution has been changed by the internet, of course, and we've seen that, you know, you can just start a channel or do what we're doing here. But I think eventually blockchain is probably we're going to get that right eventually. Like social media and all that content. I think content will have an impact sooner than later.
Yeah, and
I think you can play NFT games on Steam now.
There you go. Right. Yeah. Like, and that's a good example of content artists, right? Directly selling their artwork. I mean, again, it became, I think, a little obscene and has cooled off, but it'll settle into something real though, in a way, you know, and there is already real art, of course, in there, but
yeah. It's coming. It's definitely coming. So, all right. Eden on EOS. I wanted to talk a bit about governance here. So you're Eden OG. You were there at the beginning. People who don't know, or I mean, Eden's existed for about a year. Actually, it's a year right around now when Dan was left B1 a year ago, December, came out with Eden, started doing these live AMAs, and then you were you kind of helped join the team a bit of sorts, I guess, and you were running. You ran the very first trial election, if I recall, right?
The
first two trial elections. So one was April, next one was July, and we had our official election, which was in October, and now the next official election, April 9th. So maybe tell us a bit about you're working on a project, I believe. We had Chuck on last week. I believe you're kind of working with him on that project. You want to kind of talk about what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah. So, you know, we want to take the software that Clarion built and we'll say productize it, meaning turn it into a public good so that any, you know, EOS account holder could use it, right, to run. I think, again, Gav was talking about, you know, governance where, you know, you have a community and you just want a new way to come to consensus or a new way to elect your leadership or something. So, you know, we really want to take, because the software is very cool, right? Because it also has an accounting management system built into it for people who don't know that, you know, allows so that like when we if we win an election in Eden and get a budget, we can't just blow it right away. You know, we can only get a certain percentage each month, and I'm sure that can all be tweaked and you know, customized, right? Or certainly down the road. So that's the goal. And so we want to start by just like getting the code now from sort of Clarion and whatever, and putting it into its own GitHub, right, and everything, and just really making it into a public good. But also so that Eden can continue, because I'm of the mind that Eden was brilliant, in my opinion, and still can be, and I'm kind of glad it's happened the way it's happened. I'll not say any more about that. But I think we have a cool opportunity to keep going. Like,
yeah,
I'm just, Fractally, great, awesome, yay, go have fun with that. But I'm going to stick with the Eden thing because I think there's still a lot of meat on that bone. So that's what I'm working on.
And the DAO, this Eden as a public good of sorts. Are you thinking like a DAO builder? I mean, if we're talking future state here, this might take a while, and I understand you're going to have a Pomelo pitch to help sort of fund some of this work, which we want to definitely promote for you. But it'll be like, maybe, do you see it as something where I got a baseball team and a bunch of parents, and we want to like run, or a couple teams, I mean, it's like an organization, and I can click a button, set the payment thresholds for the people who are doing the work, set the election frequency, set the parameters, like one of those sort of, is that how you kind of see it playing out in a perfect world?
Yeah, eventually. I think, that would be the ideal for the sort of productization, and to make it as easy to use as possible like that. I mean, I don't know how long it'll take before we can maybe, I think someone will still probably need an EOS account for a while to kind of get it off the ground, but maybe if it can be done with one, so that only one person has to cross that barrier to entry. But I also, I've said from the beginning that Eden needs to be self-funded. Begging for handouts from the block producers and ENF, I mean, that's great, and they've been generous, and I think that value will get returned, but it's not sustainable to me long term if Eden is supposed to eventually represent kind of its own governance arm, which I think is its best use case down the road. We'd have token holders, block producers, Eden, right? And what that exact role is, I don't know. I don't care, but I know that 3 branches has worked pretty well in most countries now, right? And ideally, that's where we're going to go. And so I think Eden itself can eventually productize this and get revenue from it. So, that'd be part of my plan, is like what you're talking about, Chris, is something that, I would either vote for or run on to spend some of our money on, so that we can kind of like license it, or possibly turn it, run it all on a server for people and stuff, because all that back end needs to happen. And hey, if we can get some people on a monthly subscription at $10 a month and sign up 1,000 users, it could be pretty good, right? And so that's the kind of thinking that I think we need. We need to find a way to be perpetually self-funded, because money determines what you're going to do, right? That's why politics in the United States is garbage, because it's interest group politics. It's a corporate oligarchy. It's just, I give you $1 million, you vote my way, or I don't give you any more money and you don't get elected. Okay, so who's really calling the shots, right? Eden can't call its own shots until it's entirely self-funded, or at least mostly.
I think it would be good if you made the platform free to use to anyone, but then took a percentage of the allocated funds that were going to be distributed. So you capture.
Oh, well, we're not really looking to like monetize it for our EOS people in that sense, right?
Down the line.
Oh yeah, sure, that's a cool idea. We want to go get like the ETH people. Like, we're going to get money from them. We need them to pay us. That's how we're looking at it. Like,
they've done well.
I'm
not trying to fight you anymore, ETH people. Killer. Don't worry.
We're going to help you out. You can't really run DAOs the way that we can, and here you go. So why don't you do it? And we got this cool little consensus mechanism you can use too. So
yeah,
we're all friends here. We're all going across the bridge.
Because of the year of the DAO, which we've heard used many times, there's a lot of DAOs out there. None of them have a consensus mechanism like what Eden has. Like, this is the one thing where Eden and EOS should be proud, and there's a lot of people in the EOS community who've begun to sort of not be so welcoming and open to the Eden community and to Dan himself, and they like throw stones at it. But it's like, have your differences, but at least step away from those differences for a moment to respect the actual thing, and like there is some value there. This consensus mechanism, I don't wonder how many people who take the time to shit on it have taken the time to learn about it, because I have a feeling they don't quite understand exactly how it works and never participated. So they just, cast shit from the cheap seats and not recognizing that this is something that's quite unique and valuable and should be maybe something to be highlighted to the other broader ecosystem.
Yeah, I hope it eventually becomes an export, right? Like, and that could be a way to raise the EOS profile, because it will be more performant on an EOS type chain. So if you think about, if we were going to hold an election with 10,000 people, right, there'd be a lot of transactions on the voting rounds, for example, and they'd be happening very quickly because we can't wait. What do we wait like 15 minutes or half an hour between rounds at most. But I ran the first two. I didn't participate in the third because I just couldn't for personal reasons. But and the second one I ran badly, so I didn't have as much fun. But the first one was awesome, and you could tell like people enjoyed voting for people, right? Like, have you ever seen that before? I've never seen that before. People were excited. It was fun. Dan definitely captured this whole playoffs, because that's what it felt like to people. It was like, I'm pitching and Gab's pitching and Wax is pitching and Chris is like, which horse am I betting on? And is he going to make it past the next round? Does he have a good enough pitch? And people were like rooting. They stuck around to see if their first round elected person, was going to go further. And it all happened in 64 people reached consensus that they were, I'll say, ecstatic about, not just happy, ecstatic about, in 4 hours. Right? 4.5 hours, give or take.
Yep.
How can you do that? What other method does that? And just crazy. So that was when I realized, right? Like, when you have something, when you see a thing that takes a leap, right? And this is an iteration, right? We've been voting forever. Well, I don't know of a voting mechanism and again, what the beauty is, you can do it without technology. Right, which is how we did it for the most part the first time. But then you have this and the software, and it just gets awesome.
And so for those who are in Eden and you haven't signed up for the next election, this is, if you forget, this is how you want to do it, right? You go to the genesis.eden.community, eoscommunity.org. We'll put it in the description, but click. I've already opted in, so it says now I do not want to participate, but click here that you do, sign the transaction, and sign up. So right now there's 95 members signed up. I am concerned that a lot of people signed up immediately after the last election and have maybe forgotten and don't have vetted in their calendar and may not show up. But there's a treasury here. There's over 200,000 EOS in the treasury. Still. And the price of EOS performs erratically at times. But, at one point in time, this was over $1 million. Well, it was 260,000 EOS, and that was over $1 million. So 5% a month of this total treasury is distributed amongst the delegates, elected delegates. So there's money to be had. So definitely, if you're an Eden member, and if you're not in the Eden community and you're in the EOS community, join the Eden Telegram, signal your interest for wanting to become a member, and you can go through the process. It's not that difficult. Quick video call, prove you're a human, and join and participate. You've got a couple of weeks here still to get signed up.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that if you haven't done it, it's not going to be like you think, like I know there's people that I've spoken to that have projects or have initiatives that they'd love to do for EOS, and they need a little funding, and they think, well, I can't come up with a great pitch. And I'm like, it's a conversation with 5 people, man. It's intimate, right? You're not like sitting in front of like a VC board where they're all like tipping back like on their smartphones, right? It's like these are people that are kind of rooting for you. And the other thing is you don't necessarily have to win to get your funding. Remember that. Like, you pitch in a room and I'm in there or Chris is in there or whatever, and we get elected forward. If we liked what you had going on, now we heard it, right? And so do the other people in the room. And they even sometimes can say things like, yeah, Chris, we'll vote for you, but you got to fund Gav's proposal. Because that happens. Deals get made right on the fly. And so, it's not a winner take all. And being part of the process is what gives it its power. So even just showing up as a voter for the spectacle matters. So I hope people do it. I'm going to be there. I'm going to have something to say. I don't know what, but I'm going to go for it and try to get elected. So I want to pass the bylaws too. Oh, sorry, I wanted to mention that too. Very important, because the bylaws are going to be put forward by Chris and the other chief delegates, and they need to get ratified by this group of chief delegates. So I personally think the bylaws are good. So elect some smart people who are just going to approve them. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait another cycle. So, but that's an important election for that reason.
Yep, that's right. And so the other thing is one of the bylaw changes is that the elections will occur every 6 months. Sorry, every 3 months. Currently it's 6 months. We're switching it to 3 months, which coincides nicely with the Pomelo seasons, which are every 3 months. So you could run on an Eden election. So Pomelo will have, you can look now and see what pictures are there. So you decide to run in the election on April 9th and say, I'm going to take the winnings and I'm giving it to these Pomelo pitches.
Right.
And that could be your pitch. You don't have to have anything yourself you want to run on, just that you've taken the time to find some good projects, and we're going to trust you that you're going to take your funding and give it to these Pomelo pitches. That could be it.
Yeah, you're just acting as like a sort of a custodian or a curator, of other projects, and that's valuable.
Most definitely. Gab, you're smiling.
I'm thinking of what I would propose as a pitch.
Pitch decks. You should be able to knock this out of the park.
If you had to make an Eden pitch in the next 60 seconds, go.
Well, yeah. So it's been the same idea that I've had for a long time. It's as simple as having a prioritized backlog of features and products and things for the community to get behind, align on, commit to, and oversee and resource and manage and bring to manifestation, that things that will actually build that real world ecosystem of and thereby bringing new people into the ecosystem. That's high level, in a nutshell, basically what's continuously on my mind.
Would you be like placing the initial projects? Like, do you have a bunch of ideas to get started, or are you saying you'd want to just kind of fund a sort of a community hive mind incubator?
Yes. It would not be just I would certainly be I would be contributing my ideas as well, but it's definitely the hive mind that I want to try and coalesce.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we need a lot more of that. I mean, we need entrepreneurial energy. We need developer energy too, and community energy and all of that. But I feel that EOS, if anything, has actually lacked effective, experienced entrepreneurial energy. There have been a lot of things that have come and gone already, but we need some serious people who can build some businesses.
Yes.
Yeah, we got to make it real world, right? It's still too ethereal. It needs to manifest and touch our lives in a digital.
We need to create some real value, right? Like, there is a lot of just 3-card money in the industry still. It's just, I get 20% over here and 30 over there, and I'm going to offer 20 and whatever. And you just like set up a bot or something, and it's like that didn't do anything. It didn't actually create any value. It provided maybe a marginal service, for lazy people like me who don't go and figure out where I could get yields. But it's robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. Like, and again, if you want your EOS to go up, you need to drive utility value. People have to want to use the chain. It can't just be speculation. It will not last. No. Speculation is part of the beast, and that creates velocity of money, right? So token trading volume and liquidity, but it doesn't create intrinsic value, and
it doesn't sustain itself. It's not sustainable, right? Unless you got Elon Musk tweeting on your behalf, then maybe you can sustain it, because the hype cycle never ends. But even that at some points should run out of juice.
It's going to run out of juice.
Yeah.
Unless he decides to seriously do the development he's talking about, but I don't know. Why is he picking Dogecoin though? Why is he not on EOS? How have we not gotten him somehow?
I thought he was going to come
know.
across EOS. Being friends with people associated with the chain.
He's got to know, like, come on, this is way more performant than Dogecoin. Like, we can save you a lot of work, Elon. Like, just come over here and tinker. How's that?
What about this for a quick idea? Just off the top of my head, if developers can make, like, developers are good at sorting unstructured data, structured data, filtering, matching, allowing people to find what they want, and then using an advertising fee model to external fiat businesses who want to reach an audience. And that fiat money then is used to buy the cryptocurrencies of the blockchains that are part of this massive search marketplace. And so we're buying the token because the fiat companies are paying for advertising by using their fiat to buy the tokens, which supports the token price. And the developers are busy connecting and filtering and developing a better user experience for finding products that they're interested in. And then that's real world products and services that people are currently looking for. And they do so in a better way because we're providing better filtering and matching of data. So there you go. One product idea to think about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're just over an hour. This has been a great conversation. Any closing remarks from anybody before we shut her down?
I'm looking forward to the UX Bridge coming out and when that's available. So exciting times. And thank you, Dominic, for explaining that and going through all the things that UX are doing. It's really insightful. It was great. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. It's been great to just, I've been involved for a long time, and a lot of this stuff was definitely very stealth. And so I've known about it for years and been waiting to be able to talk about it. So it's pretty cool that we can. And I think it's going to have more of a positive impact than people think, but they need to see it, and that's cool. And it's happening. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. And I would just say thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to come on. And, I like to chat with other folks who care about the same things I do. So it's always cool. And I really do hope that this next Eden election gets some love. And so I hope people do show up. So I think we can do something really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll all be there.
I think we'll have to have it's Saturday, April 9th. It's at 9 a.m. Eastern. So you got to sign up at 24 hours before that. So you got to sign up by April 8th at 9 a.m. Eastern. And so the week after that, we'll have to have a special live stream recap of the election. So maybe we'll get you back on for that, and we'll have a review of how it went. But definitely, once you get your Pomelo pitch up, let us know. We'll make sure we spread the word on that bad boy.
I think we're getting it up today. We wanted to translate it into a couple languages, Chinese, Korean, and Spanish, just trying to be more mindful of that. Yep. I think those of us who are in this Western English speaking world sort of forget that the bulk of our community is not. And, I'd like to see more of that.
ESB should help with that, I think. With the translation.
Yeah, that's what we're using those guys. They've been great.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, it's a good service. Okay. Right on. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and catch us next week, same time. And have a nice week until then.
Good weekend. Thanks everyone.
Bye.